Hello, hello, hello. Before we start this episode, let's give a huge shout out to all of our patrons over on patreon.com/bitterbrownfams. For as little as $1, you can support this podcast and get a cute little reward like bonus episodes, video episodes, and more. Special shout out to Cristian Galindo, Evelyn Preciado, and Cassandra Tapia, who are in our BFF tier. If you also want to support this pod, check out the link in the description. Let's start the show. All right. Hello, hello, hello. I am Ruben coming to you from Portland, Oregon. And with me today is a very special guest, longtime friend of the pod, Daniel Alvarenga. Woo, cheers.
Hey, happy to be here. Third time.
Oof. Where are you coming from? Where can the people stalk you?
I'm in Satan's butthole, aka
Yeah.
Washington, D.C.
Mm.
Um, yeah,
That reminds
yeah.
me, last time we talked, weren't you guys getting all militarized?
Yes, we are gonna. We're so like
You're
normalized. Like
still.
we're still militarized, but like so yes, we have ICE. We have all the federal agents like the major cities have, but we also have like a National Guard presence. And the National Guard, they're like in like all the metro stops downtown, and they're basically just a bunch of 18-year-olds playing Candy Crush or just
Shut the
like
fuck
walk
up.
walking around. Like they're not really doing much. They haven't really been doing much, and they're not like the prime agitators. They're not the ones kidnapping people. Not to say that like welcome, we love you, because we don't, but they're just like a presence. They're just like omnipresent in the city, especially like in high touristy areas. And I don't know, I guess it makes some people feel safe, but it's they're not doing anything. Like sometimes they pick up trash, like I guess. But yeah, like DC is militarized. DC is militarized and it's like normalized now. Like
Yeah.
I expect to go downtown and to any like major metro station downtown to see like a gaggle of them, like four or five, because they're always like there's always a gaggle of them. It's never like one National Guard. There's like
Yeah.
five of them together. And like, at first there was like a lot of this like fuck you energy to them. Now it's like, I guess you're here, girl, like whatever. Like,
I forgot what was the big threat that they originally were deployed for last year. If so many things have happened that I'm just like, why the
um,
f
it was just part of like militarizing like the cities, like all the cities that are like have been having a lot of immigration activity, like DC was
Oh,
caught up in that. But the thing is about DC, it's like we're not a state, so we don't have a governor that can be like halt.
yeah.
They just railroad over our like we have a Congress representative, but she doesn't do anything. She's like 90 something.
Oh no.
And then we have a mayor who like kind of Bowser. Her name is Bowser, by the way. And she's a villain.
Shut the
She's
fuck up.
Yeah, she like she rolled the red carpet for Trump. And but even then, like it's not like we can really do much about it because we don't have like representation in that way. Like a state, at least you guys have Gavin Newsom being like, "Stop, girl," and we don't have that. We don't have that kind of person. So like whatever the Republicans kind of want in power, like because they have all the power right now,
Yeah.
that's what they get. And the locals, it's a very Democrat city. It's a majority black city. Salvadorans are the biggest Latino group.
Oh,
The only city in America where Latinos are the biggest immigrant group and Latino group.
Salvador.
Yeah, but there is no like representation. There's no like equal representation. So like people can't really like they can't really choose their destiny. That's why people want to become a state, and it's this whole
Yeah.
local thing.
Oof. Yeah, that whole statehood thing, always like, I don't fully get it, but whatever people need to do.
Yeah, and people always want to package it with Puerto Rico, and everyone's like,
Yeah.
hold up.
Like,
Um,
yeah, I didn't know there was that many people in DC, but you know,
yeah, there's
whatever gets us more electoral votes because they're usually liberals, right?
yeah, like this is a Democrat city, like through and through. And like they would never like for one, it's a majority black city, and I think that's why a lot of people don't want to give voter representation throughout the years.
Mm,
But it's also just like, Republicans know that this city would go to Democrats and there'd be more Democrat representation. And so there's that too. And um, it's a dumb situation that I find myself in. I love this city. It's got a lot of culture, a lot of stuff that everyone thinks DC is like that one show Scandal with Kerry, Washington,
Yeah.
and that's like a very tiny part of DC.
Oh no.
That's Capitol Hill and like that area.
Yeah.
But outside of that, like humans live here, and it's a wonderful city. Like live music is so accessible here because everything is close. It's a smallish city, but transportation is awesome. Like I'm someone who can't really drive,
Mm.
and so like I've given up on going back home to like the LA
Oh,
area because like
you're
I
a
don't see
virgin who
myself.
can't drive.
Yes, I'm a virgin who can't. I'm something who can't drive, not a virgin anymore. But um, just just so y'all know. But yeah, I'm basically a virgin who can't drive.
Oh. Um, well, yeah, I've been driving since I was 13. But I also don't, yeah, I keep visiting LA and I like keep like the people there I love, but the situation, the traffic only seems to be getting worse. Like, even the movie I just quoted, Clueless, like I remember like there was a scene where Cher's dad tells her like anywhere in LA takes 50 minutes to get to. And like that or something like that. It was like a
Hmm.
small amount of time. And that was in the 90s. And I kind of remember not like I remember traffic being an issue, but not like an hour like for sure every time. And it was crazy. Like every time I go, shit's crazy.
Yeah, like
Expensive.
I haven't lived in the LA area since I was like 17 to 20 maybe,
Uh-huh.
and I'm like pushing 40 now, and
Oh, girl.
I haven't lived there almost 2 decades, and it's just like to me like the LA that's in my head is the one from the 90s and the 2000s. And then I go back and I'm like, what is this place? And like you, all the people I love are there. My best friend
Yeah.
is there. My best friends are there. My family, my mom, super close to her, and that's what keeps me going. But like, yeah, like I can't see myself. I used to like I'm from Pomona, by the way. So I when I would commute to LA, like I eventually had to learn how to drive. I only have vision in one eye, so it makes driving really dangerous. But I would do it. I eventually learned how to drive for a while, but like I used to do commutes from Pomona to LA, and it would take me 3 hours on public transportation. I'd get on the Metrolink, I'd get on a bus, I would get on a metro, and it was like an odyssey just to get to my internships. And
Eesh.
um, I hated that. So now I'm in some a smaller East Coast city where I can just walk to places.
I do like that about Portland that I can kind of, when it's not snowing and raining, I can bike everywhere. The
We
problem is
had,
it's snowing and raining all the time.
speaking of raining, so we had something crazy happen yesterday. We had snow in the middle of the day and it went from like 80 degrees
Oh
to
no.
30 something in the same day.
Oh Lord.
And it's like historic, never has happened. Like Mother Nature's trying to choke us out.
Yeah. So it hasn't been, one thing I always say about Portland is I'm like one bad winter away from moving out of here. And this winter has not been bad. But I recently found out we usually get like a bad snowstorm that like shuts down the city because we don't have the infrastructure to deal
Hmm.
with snow. This year hasn't snowed yet. The rains have barely kind of started, but and they're not expected to like we're not expected to get as much water as we should, which is an issue for forest fires, which is the big issue here. Um, but it's a bigger issue because apparently the cycle of life and nature, like we rely on those bad like winters to not only give us water and to like prevent forest fires, but also to kill rodents and bugs. And because the weather has been so hospitable to them, we are expected to have like fucking, you know, what's a swarm of rats and fucking insects in the summer, which is
Rat
like,
orgy.
bitch, I hate rats. Oh God. Yeah,
So
so
DC is also a big rat city, but so
oh.
we had this
Yeah,
is the
yeah.
worst winter I've ever had in DC. DC doesn't snow every year, and it's an East Coast city, but it's not like New York. It's not that north. We're below the Mason-Dixon line, for example, and so we're like south adjacent, and so it doesn't always get cold, but this year like it froze over for like 2 weeks. We had something called snowcrete where like the snow like can like congealed. I don't know what the verb is, but it turned into concrete, concretized, and people were slipping and sliding. Like people couldn't leave their houses, and we because we only get a
Oh
big snowstorm
Lord.
we only get a big snowstorm like this every like couple years, like 5, 6 years, that the city was not prepared. Like I said, we have a villain for a mayor. Her name is Bowser. She's like on her last year. She doesn't have to be reelected. So she just did not give a fuck. And so um we had this is like the first winter that I was like, maybe I need to go back to the West Coast because I don't know if I can do this again.
I mean, Portland is you know how to drive a bike, right?
Yes, I can drive a bike. I love bikes. Yeah, I can. I can do that. Um, maybe I
Oh.
should. Maybe I should.
You know what actually is like a more friendly walk? I assume pedestrian city is in the west coast of Seattle. Yeah.
Yes, I
Yeah.
can live my
Yeah.
grungy dreams
Girl,
in
you can live
Seattle.
your Grey's Anatomy dream.
I
Oh,
don't
and
know
that's
that show.
what? Oh my God. But yeah, your grunge dream, I guess. Yeah, you're more into that, really.
Um,
Uh, but usually we start with a recession indicator. And this week, I want to say that the recession indicator is the fact that Ticketmaster and Live Nation settled out of court for their charges for what's that word? Monopolizing the ticket and venue owning industry. And the government, they were already found like guilty, like of shit. Like there's so many receipts, like their CEOs and their big industry heads being like, "Yeah, I can't believe we're getting away with this." Like, "Oh, we'll cheat them on parking. Sometimes they'll be charging $200 for fucking parking." Uh and wild shit like that. So they were found like guilty, and the Trump administration just let Live Nation pay themselves out. So the government is so fucking broke that even when somebody's fucking guilty, it just lets them pay a little fucking nothing blood money to get out of there, as opposed to like doing their actual fucking job of breaking down a fucking monopoly that has been like, it's not like this just happened overnight. Like they have been an issue for decades now. Even the fact that we're fighting Ticketmaster slash Live Nation. Like, I want to remind you folks that like when Live Nation came to be in like the 2000s, they were um, posited as a competitor to Ticketmaster, right? Like they, were buying exclusive contracts with the biggest acts. I remember when they came out, they had like Madonna, Shakira specifically, like on their roster of like these are artists you can only see with Live Nation, and like that was their big thing. And then they got bought out by Ticketmaster. So they bought out their direct and biggest competitor, like raising their ownership of the ticketing industry in the United States to above like 70% at this point. Like they essentially own every big venue in America. You cannot be a big touring act without going through them. Like
mhm.
their next like biggest competitor is AXS, and they don't even touch like the monopoly that Ticketmaster has. So like that is
Yeah.
definitely a recession indicator to me when our broke ass government makes broke ass moves.
I hate Ticketmaster. They sold me some tickets to a Waves show. The surf punk band it's their landlord. It's a whole thing. But um, you know, this venue, they were not supposed to sell me a ticket. Like they resold me a ticket for a venue that does not work with Ticketmaster. Like they're explicitly anti-Ticketmaster, and it's Union Stage in DC. Love them. They fought for me to get my money back, but then like Ticketmaster banned me for their platform for calling them out and getting my money back. They're like, we're banning you. And it's just like, okay, I just started a new account and whatever. Started a new email, who cares? They're still taking my money, but it was so petty, and then that's another thing why I love DC. There's so many small little venues like that like either don't do Ticketmaster or there's like a DIY. There's a big DIY scene, and unlike a big city like LA, like I can actually get to them on time
Yeah.
and don't have to worry about parking. But yeah, like screw Ticketmaster. Like their day will come. Guillotine.
Yeah. Yeah. Portland has like one Ticketmaster venue. It's not really theirs. It's like kind of city owned. That does bite us in the butt a little bit though, because nobody ever comes here. Um, and so Ticketmaster is actually proposing, like, ever since I moved here, Ticketmaster has been in the works to have a venue here, to install a venue here. but they keep getting pushed back from the city because there are also a ton of tiny venues here. Like, you know, I'm never gonna see a Beyonce in Portland, but if like, I was surprised that Cardi B came here, to be honest, like earlier this year. And
When a big act comes there, where do they play?
the Moda Center, which is where our basketball team plays,
Okay.
or they've started doing Providence Park, which is a soccer field, and that I think has more seating, but that's usually like really like white oriented acts. Like at
Oh,
the top of my head, the people who have played there have been Post Malone and then Green Day,
oh,
and
yeah,
I think
okay.
Food Fighters. So it's like really like people coming in with, out of their little trailers type of shit. And by that I mean like the audience, not the acts.
Mm.
But yeah, so we don't really get big acts, but you know, we get the medium-sized acts regular, like they don't really miss the spot, or like the up
Those
and coming acts.
those
I
are
saw
better.
Yeah, I saw Chaperone here when she had like 8 songs to her name. She played at like a 200 people capacity venue. And then I saw her again at an 800 people capacity venue here. Like, yeah, right after she released her debut album. By the time I finally got to see her the third time, it was in LA and it was with fucking 40,000 other people. And like, those are different experiences, let me tell you that.
Yeah, for sure. Like even when the artist is good, like you lose that intimacy.
Hmm.
I'm over going to big concerts at this point. It's just like it's unaffordable,
Yeah,
recession indicator, and it's
real.
just the experience isn't the same anymore.
Yeah,
And you have to plan your whole life around it. Like, like I said, parking's $200. Like,
yeah.
do I want to eat or see Beyonce? Like, I don't know. Like,
I think I would skip a meal for Beyonce. That's my one. I mean, the Cardi ticket wasn't very expensive. And funny thing is that Cardi's concert, she made it feel like it was like still very intimate, even though it was a big stadium. Whereas Lady Gaga did not. This is like my third time seeing Lady Gaga, and I don't think I would see her again. This third time I only went because it was my little sister's birthday. But
oh,
and she loves Gaga. But yeah, I think she just like performs and doesn't like do fan interactions, kind of. Whereas Cardi was like very well aware that she has people that she like wants to connect with. Um, I also saw Sarah Larson recently, not Ticketmaster related, and
okay.
that was an excellent concert too. So yeah, I agree that the smaller like stages are really taking the cake now that like big venue concerts are becoming unaffordable. And I think that like artists are like putting too much of a distance between their fans. Like I just heard like the Harry Styles tickets are like, they start at like, in the hundreds of dollars, right? Like I remember when like a nosebleed would be like 20, $40.
And now everything has dynamic pricing too. Like
Yeah.
even like housing. I don't know about where you're at, but in
Shut the
DC,
fuck
like
up.
housing has dynamic prices.
I thought they ruled that illegal.
I'm telling you, like it's the Wild West out here. Nothing matters. Like it's Trump town. But yeah, but the concerts having that dynamic pricing. I don't know if it's still a thing, but like that was like, oh wow, they've completely lost it. Like this is terrible. And just even just the times we're living in, the economy is so crappy. Like,
Yeah.
you can't expect working people to like, skip so many meals for a ticket.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm remembering uh, this interview I saw with Nirvana recently where they were like complaining that Madonna was selling like $80 tickets. And
yeah,
Nirvana was like, yeah, I don't think we should charge more than $20. Like
yeah.
20 fucking dollars to see Nirvana. Can you imagine?
Yeah, amazing. Oh man, yeah. Kurt Cobain would hate today.
Hmm.
Um, he probably saw it coming too.
Yeah. I mean,
Because
that's what.
yeah, no, because like I think of Pearl Jam. Pearl Jam, like
Yep.
they've been doing this Ticketmaster fight since the '90s. They're old men now, and the Ticketmaster is like more powerful than ever.
Yeah. Like people like now Coachella it's its own evil beast, but back in the day, they be like Pearl Jam started Coachella as like an anti-Ticketmaster thing because Ticketmaster would only like let them play in certain venues in LA or some shit like that. They were like, well, fuck you. We're gonna go outside of LA and bring all the fans this way as well as other like acts and do our own shit out here in the desert. Like, over the last, 15 years or so, like it has changed. Coachella has changed a lot, some say for the worse, but that's how it started. It started as an anti-Ticketmaster like festival.
Yeah, I remember when the only people who went to Coachella were the hipsters. Like I could
Yeah.
never go, but it was a lot more accessible back then, and I regret
Yeah.
not making an effort to go more. It's just I just didn't. And but I remember just like the hipstery of hipsters were there.
Yeah.
Like now it's like this whole thing.
Yeah.
This
Bitch, I went there with like $0 in my pocket, eating protein bars and camping out in that sun all weekend because I couldn't even back then I couldn't afford the food there. And my friend worked as a promoter for like a beer. She would be one of those girls that would like, hey, try this new beer in like a tank top or whatever. And so we had a bunch of free beer and free protein bars. And I think the whole weekend couldn't cost us $600.
Yeah, I know people who got in because I'm from the IE, right? And so Coachella's not as far as it is to LA.
Mhm.
And I knew people who like would go to work at Coachella so they can get in for free,
Mhm.
like serve beer and stuff like that, and then they can enjoy the shows. And I'm allergic to work, so I was like, no, I'm not doing that. But I like had all these chances to go when it was like cooler, and now I'm just kind of like, I wouldn't want to go to Coachella just because like it's an arm and a leg. And it's like, I'm sure it's not as intimate as it was, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's like this. So Salvadorans are losing their mind this year because this year is going to be like the first Salvadoran artist, and like it's this Los Hermanos Flores.
Mhm.
They're this like cumbia troupe that's been going on. They're like multi-generational, so like they respawn new members.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I
But
was
like
wondering about that because I was like, aren't they
yeah,
from the 70s?
yes. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And but it's kind of like how like Los Tigres del Norte had their moment at Coachella.
Yeah.
This is like the equivalent for Salvadorans. Los Hermanos Flores make like the most popular Salvadoran song. The most popular Salvadoran song is called La Bala,
Hmm.
The Bullet. We're never beating the violence allegations, but they're a fun group. They're a fun group, and they have a female vocalist.
Um, Speaking of female vocalist and El Salvador, you wanted to talk about Miss Shakira herself, Miss Hips Don't Lie, being in El Salvador or having was it more than one concert?
Yes, so El Salvador was under Shakira law last month. Um, her hips don't lie, allegedly, but the Bukele administration does. So El Salvador has never really had big acts before, so it was historic for El Salvador. She had a residency, like it wasn't like a long residency, but it was like 4 or 5 days maybe.
That's a
Um,
residency.
yeah, yeah, okay, yeah, that's a residency. And so, like, El Salvador pulled out the red carpet, like an undisclosed amount of public funds were used to like probably lure her and make it nice because it's like people came from all over the region. Like, so like if you're like a Shakira fan in like Belize and Panama and Costa Rica, Guatemala, like you're coming to the El Salvador show. And so it brought like the whole region, but it's like it was also like disappointing for me because it's like it's low key. Um, El Salvador is it's under a fascist regime, Bukele, and it's like quote unquote safer because he like put all the gangsters in jail, but like there's a ton of state violence happening, a ton of journalists are in exile. And so like her kind of being in El Salvador kind of whitewashes like the human rights abuses that Bukele has been doing. And like the world knows now because immigrants have been sent to the CCOT, this the terrorism center. And I think we talked about this last time I was on the show, so I don't want to rehash it too much, but the victims of the regime, which is what they're called, like the group is called like the victims of the regime. They did like an open letter to Shakira.
Shut up.
And what was crazy about what was crazy about that tour as well is that it was called like Las Mujeres No Lloran.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Oh,
because because she had that whole like thing
yeah.
with Pique, right? But like everyone's like Las Mujeres No Lloran, but you're coming here and there's like hundreds of people that have been jailed as political prisoners. that have been, there's people, multiple people who have died. Like, we don't have the official count because the government doesn't share transparency. Again, it's a dictatorship. Shakira went to a dictatorship, had a concert, but like people are like, Las mujeres no lloran, but what about the mothers of the people whose human rights have been violated? And at the same time she was there, a 60-year-old woman died in prison in El Salvador.
Mm.
And none of these people have had trial, right? So, the first thing people say is like, well, what if she was a marero? And I'm just like, I don't think the 6-year-old woman was like a bloodthirsty gangster. I doubt it. Um, and if she was, she didn't have trial. So like, why is she dying in jail? So I'm just gonna read you a little bit of the letter. They said, "Dear Shakira, El Salvador welcomes you," and this is translated. El Salvador welcomes you with friendship, but also with the pain and mourning of the thousands of innocent victims of state terrorism under President Bukele. In El Salvador, women, mothers, and family members of innocent victims also grieve. Those who suffer imprisonment, torture, and death, forced evictions, persecution, and sham trials, all without any judicial guarantees. Your concerts will take place under a state of exception that has lasted nearly 3 years, without constitutional guarantees, with state violence that violates human rights with total impunity. The innocent victims sincerely hope that your stay in El Salvador is not used by the government to cover up injustice and its condemnable acts, but rather that the inspired message of your songs and your presence in our country serve to give us strength in the struggles for freedom of our loved ones, and so that no one else has to mourn them. Freedom for innocent people, February 7th, 2026. So they didn't even say Shakira don't come. They said Shakira, like,
Okay.
keep us in mind, because like these folks know they have no power.
Yeah.
They can't be like, stop Shakira. But yeah, it was, it was sad that like nobody uplifted this during this. It was all this news of like historic residency in Central America. And it was a lot of people in the region like, oh, I'm so excited to go.
Yeah.
And you see these people because like Associated Press and these big news agencies came to El Salvador for it. And they were interviewing tourists, and tourists were like, I can't believe how good El Salvador is. Like, I need to come here to concerts more often. So it boosted El Salvador's image, and Shakira boosted a dictator's image. But
Mm.
like, a lot of people told me, were like, "Oh, well, we're not surprised because like Lebanon's getting bombed, and that's her heritage. She doesn't say
Yeah.
anything. Nayib Bukele is Palestinian. He doesn't say anything about what's going on. So,
I
you
forget he's
know,
fucking Palestinian. Is that I
yeah, yeah,
forgot.
yeah, yeah. They're both Latino Arabs.
Lord. Who are both
Yeah,
getting bombed by Israel.
yeah, they don't care. Um,
Oh my
and it was
God.
disappointing. It was disappointing too because I love Shakira. Like, like I've loved her since the '90s.
Yeah.
Like, me, like women with guitars is like my favorite genre.
Mhm.
And like, back in the '90s, she had like this image where she was like this like grungy chick,
Who did
and
talk about politics?
who talked about politics, and like she had a foundation like Pies Descalzos,
Yeah.
and so like she seemed this, and like I don't expect pop stars to
Mhm.
uphold human rights. I don't. So like it's not surprising to me, but it sucks. It sucks,
Yeah.
and I wish people cared a little bit more about um, you know, some of this stuff. But like,
Yeah.
I've been in this space for a while to know that people really don't care. They want their pop stars, and they want them now.
Yeah.
And if you have to kill a few people for me to see that pop star, then so be it. That's the world we
Yeah.
live in.
That's like my question as you were talking, I'm like wondering like yeah, would a cultural boycott be the answer here?
Should
Like,
people not be going to El Salvador? It's
yeah.
funny because like I mean, sure, I don't know, because El Salvador is, because of the regime of Bukele, like he has made it safe for tourists. Like
Mm.
the people that Bukele are targeting, he's targeting poor people in El Salvador who don't have like a legal recourse against his abuses, people who are poor, criminalized because they're poor. So, tourists are never going to experience that. And a lot of people, don't like me because I've been, speaking about this and like saying like, well, he's bringing El Salvador forward, he's bringing tourism. And El Salvador is a country that's so thirsty for tourism, so thirsty for world validation. And Bukele, if only momentarily, has given us that like platform on a global stage where people look at our country nice.
Hmm.
Before we were always the most violent country, war torn, gangsters, bad hombres. And so like for a lot of people, like Bukele makes them feel good and he makes them feel good about being Salvadoran. And I think that's incredibly sad because it just shows you like we have low racial self-esteem. But it's also just like
No class solidarity either, because like who are you pushing under the bus for like that esteem, right?
yeah, and the thing
It's
is
poor
like
people.
and it's but like like it sucks. It sucks because like a lot of people are making content now about El Salvador. Like, look at El Salvador, they're going. And so it's like I've been going to El Salvador for a long time, and tourists have never been like the targets of the violence, even when things were like trending in a different direction in terms of like homicides and whatnot and gang violence. It's always been safe for the tourists to go to El Salvador, but we also know like how harmful tourism is to places in the Caribbean and Latin America. Like, Puerto Rico, has a lot of tourism, and it's getting even more tourism now because of Bad Bunny and all of this. Sort of like kind of like cultural prestige and all these cultural products that have come out of Puerto Rico. But like people in Puerto Rico will be the first ones to tell you that tourism has been harmful in XYZ ways. Things are unaffordable for the locals. There's like apagones, and El Salvador is also becoming unaffordable, but it's unaffordable for the locals, like especially now because people are coming back because it's quote unquote safer, like El Salvador, like the diaspora people and like tech bros because it's a Bitcoin country are like gentrifying the locals out, and the cost of living is awful. Like El Salvador has dollars. We're not a colony like Puerto Rico, but like there is a lot of parallels. Like we have the dollar economy, and so our economy is at the whim of the US, and it makes things a little bit more unaffordable for the average person. Like you go to neighboring countries, they have their own currency, but like like they have smaller denominations, and they don't have to like, if the dollar goes up, then things don't go up for them. And so I'm not an economist, but I'm just going to say that we have a dollarized economy. We're like deeply tied with the US, and it's pricing people out. And it sucks. It sucks for the locals. But it just none of this is being talked about because we're still like in this haze of like Bukele's a good man. The only thing that has kind of broken that haze has been that he's part of the axis of evil with Trump. Like him and Marco Rubio, they're like you see them kikiing in Miami at like little fascist gatherings. And so like, the people who are anti-Trump, anti-ICE are starting to become aware that Bukele is a collaborator. He wants to receive, you know, immigrants who are being kidnapped, So, there was this joke for a while, like after the Venezuelans and Kilmar Abrego were sent to the terrorism confinement center in El Salvador. There's this joke that like if you're out of line in the US, you get sent to El Salvador. And people still crack that joke these days. And it's just kind of like, okay, like is our image really that much better? Like now we're like Guantanamo Bay 2.0. Is that like a good thing? And a lot of people don't care because like, well, Shakira's there. So, okay.
Yeah, that's so as I'm thinking about like like things like that, like oh well, Shakira's there, it can't be that bad. If a cultural boycott is not the answer, would something like what Bad Bunny did in Chile be more like of what would be realistic for her to do, where it's just like call out the government essentially while
Oh,
there?
yes, we just need awareness. So yeah, like a cultural boycott doesn't mean anything if people don't know why they're boycotting. And I think we already
Yeah.
have some things like, we know about the CCOT. We know that Bukele is like in bed with the Trump administration. These things should be like enough to like deter people, but it's hard because there's a lot of Salvadorans who want to go see their family. So like, um, I'm not going to tell people like that to boycott, because sometimes the window of time to go see people is narrow, and it's at this point we just need awareness. And like I've been screaming for years, and you know this, I've been screaming for years, like my voice is hoarse. I've gotten threats from people both from El Salvador and from here because there's a big diaspora here. And you know, I've done my journalism, like I have a podcast about it, Umo, that I did 2 years ago. And so like I've done what I could to make people informed as much as I can within my power, and it just none of it has like moved the needle, and none of the work that a lot of other journalists from El Salvador have really moved the needle like just uncovering that Trump is really close to Bukele has. So right now, yeah, we just need like awareness. And it's like I hate to be like, raise awareness because like, yes, that's not enough. Like we need this to end. We need this to end. And El Salvador is just so intertwined with the fucked up immigration moment we're in right now too. So like all of that needs to come to like a halt, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, like you were saying, like, yeah, you hate to say, like, raise awareness because I feel like when we hear that now, at least a lot of us who are a little older now have been in movements for a lot of our adult life. Now, when we like hear raise awareness, we're like, what's that gonna do? Because it's like such a elementary step, but that's kind of where we are with El Salvador, despite all the work that's happening. And despite like we know because it's been like in the news that like like when people get deported from the US, even if they're not from El Salvador, they still be getting sent over there. Like we know that they are essentially having like a version, and maybe it sounds hyperbolic to folks, but there's proof that supports what I'm about to say. But in some ways, like, Bukele is fostering like the modern Auschwitz over there. Like,
yeah, yeah. And um he's finally started to get like his human rights stuff like they're starting to take it to international courts. A lot of European countries are like, you know, taking, like absorbing this message, but like the US is like at the center of this, right? And so like I don't think anything in El Salvador is going to change without a big regime change happening here, unfortunately. Unfortunately, so like if like what's more important than like boycotting El Salvador is like halting the deportation machine here, halting the regime here. Like, okay, like I want you to be aware of El Salvador, but like, think global, act local. Like,
yeah, because we're also
oh,
paying for yes, El Salvador is like the home of that. Is it called the CCOT? What I'm thinking about, like
yes, the CCOT, this
yeah,
the terrorism confinement center.
they're the ones that have it, but it's like US funded. Like our taxes contribute to people being sent and kept there. Like so when we think about like local, like thinking globally, act locally, like that's the kind of shit like our money's leading to deportations that essentially fund that existing.
Yeah, like right now, make sure your community members don't get sent to El Salvador. Like, basically, there was actually like I'm not gonna bore you with it, but there was like a court. It's like international court is finally like moving on El Salvador, and so like maybe when Trump is out and he's not like as protected, Bukele can get some sort of punishment. But like as we know, like international court fails us all the time. Like
Girl,
Palestine is allowed to be obliterated. And the international court is like,
don't do that.
yeah, and it's just like, and these things are important to like document and support.
Yeah.
And, everybody wants to have that like Nuremberg trial moment with this administration. And I hope we get there.
I don't know,
But
girl. If it didn't happen after the fucking January 6th shit, we had 4 years to do this, and we let and he was found guilty of stuff, and he was still able to run as president.
yeah, so this like, so this new like court case that against like these new like not war crimes but like crimes against humanity that they're trying to like take Bukele to the courts like this actually came out yesterday that legal experts are kind of moving on the El Salvador case because I think it's you want to lay a ground you want to have a plan for when like the regimes fall and when or if when they do but I don't think it's going to move the needle immediately and it might give like some people some hope but um, occasionally Latin American dictators have been, tried, but they've mostly been like, slapped with the wrist and allowed to live to old age. So it's just like, um, And I think sometimes it's also the problem with us as Salvadorans, like the people who are anti-Bukele, at least in the diaspora, we're a minority. We're a minority, and if the majority of our people don't want justice, then like what can I do about it? Like, and this goes back to our war. We never got justice for the war. Nobody got tried for like war crimes, in the 80s and 90s. We had amnesty for war criminals, and so like we never like we've never had a process of accountability ever. And it'd be great to start now, but I I'm not optimistic about anything happening real soon. But yeah, it's a bummer. It's a bummer. And I've been in this kind of state of like, this is my bread and butter for a while, like this kind of stuff. And it's just been like exasperating and exasperating to like talk about this.
I mean, how do I say this? Um, what do you attribute to like maybe more people not being against like or awake to this regime? Um, yeah,
Like I said, like a lot of people really want to feel warm and fuzzy about El Salvador. A lot of people like, they want Salvadorans, we're like a tiny country. We're a tiny country, and we don't have a lot of media representation. So, like, when people see a pupusa on a TV show or a mention, they go like, "Woo, El Salvador!" It's like when Bad Bunny was calling out all the countries, and like people felt like really represented just by the mere mention. And it's just
Canada.
kind of like Latina girls in Montreal. Um, but yeah, it's just kind of like I think we need to stop. You know we need to stop just like searching for those crumbs of representation for one.
How
Yeah,
do you,
yeah.
how do you wake people up to that? Like you see your home country, your heritage in a good light for the first time. It's always been criminals and blah blah blah. How do you have you been successful in helping someone
Like,
in see through that veneer?
yeah, a lot of people tell
And
me, look, thank you for like talking about this because like at first I was a Bukele fan,
yeah,
and then slowly and slowly started realizing, and in part was because of some of the content that I've done. Um, in part, and it's just like sometimes like Salvadorans don't care what other Salvadorans think. They care what white people think, like white American people think. And so it's just like, okay, like I could say the same thing, but if like Mr. like, like and Mr. Spaniard Univision or Mr. like, BBC in London is saying it, then like maybe they have a point. But it also won't change until like it affects them, unfortunately. I start to meet people being like, I didn't believe you until like my uncle got caught or my aunt got caught. And, they're not a gang member, they're not doing anything violent. They were just, criminalized unfairly and unjustly. And so like I hate for it to have to happen like that, where like, you know, being impacted by it is gonna radicalize you. But being informed, I think it also shows like how in touch you are with El Salvador, because if you're having real conversations, if you're having real talk, not just taking in the information from your family and just taking but like actually talking to people about their daily struggles, if having that real talk, having nourishing that rapport with people, because a lot of people don't want to talk about El Salvador's problems in El Salvador, like they want to keep hush hush because they don't know who's listening. They don't want to be a target of the regime. But like, when I show my true colors in El Salvador, people are like, "Oh, you know about this, right? You know about this. Let me tell you what I've seen that I can't say out loud because the government won't get me." And I've had taxi drivers tell me that like, I ran for office and then the Nayib Bukele affiliated people threatened me and that was that. And so now I'm driving this taxi and it's just like you know, I know people who work in public health in El Salvador, and they're like, it's getting hard because like Bukele is not paying us or teachers. Like he's like letting go of a lot of teachers, and public funding. He's stealing public funds. Like we've kind of accepted that our politicians are going to steal from us. Like everyone's just corrupt. That's just kind of how people are, and there isn't a strong opposition. Like we had a very strong like Marxist sort of party that was really never allowed to fully take power, and a lot of people blame them for things that have happened in the past. So like we're very like ideologically divided. Like you see a lot of other diasporas, like people talk about Venezuelans, people talk about Cubans, like being pro-communist, anti-communist, and that being like such a stark divide. Like El Salvador has that too, going back to our war. We don't talk about El Salvador in that way, in that Cold War sort of way anymore, because like quote unquote the war is over and everyone under Nayib Bukele has united. Um, but we still have those scars, and it's why like a lot of Latinos, you know, come with fascism to this country and vote like fascists. It's like this has been deeply ingrained throughout generations. So it's like it's also doing this like very painful work of like digging deep into our histories of like El Salvador has a very deep history with resisting fascism and escaping fascism from the 1980s. And like I've talked about this ad nauseum. You know this, you grew up in LA, you know Salvadorans, like you've heard these stories. And I'm waiting for people to like at least this new generation to like tap into that again, because that's going to inform perhaps how we see ourselves in the trajectory of history. I wrote this article for NACLA where I talk about how like so much immigration policy, so much of the immigration like wins that we've had, and we've had wins, but they've been small, like sanctuary cities. Sanctuary cities came from Americans doing anti-war organizing to protect Central Americans from US-backed war. We need to tap into that history at this very moment, not just to be not just to save immigrants, not just to like, be in solidarity with immigrants, but to also be anti-war against what's going on in the Middle East. Um, it's we need to tap into that, and like I've been at my wit's end, and I'm always trying to like scheme another plan. Like if I make content like this, or if I write an article like that, or if I show up on this podcast, maybe I'll convert someone. And maybe I'm converting someone now. Who knows? Comment if I am. But it's really exhausting because there's no support. There's no support. There's like Salvadorans, we're very divided ideologically. We're very divided because of things. And there is no support for Salvadorans in like the Latino media infrastructure. Like um we're just a cute little niche, when you want to talk about pupusas, and like I don't want to have those surface level discussions anymore. Like I'm over representation. Like representation is not liberation. And
Girl, I said something to that effect in the last podcast and I lost a a Patreon supporter. Because I was like, yeah, like, you know, we are unfortunate. Like, yes, I think that when we were coming into consciousness like a decade ago at this point, like when we started like really popping off on social media, like in 2016, like that was a big fight. Like because that was like the most immediate answer to what we saw were problems. It's like representation.
yeah,
But like that Obama era, like uh, identity politics, what I called, the Lizzo era of identity politics, we're beyond that. Like at this point.
I still think storytelling and representation storytelling is still important, like for the soul, but like
Yeah.
I don't think it's like this political project all the time.
Yeah, I
And it's interesting because like I've spent years on the internet yelling, and you can't look up the tweets because I deleted them, but because I need to maintain employment. um but like I spent years talking about this, and can we talk about the people reheating my nachos?
girl, feel free. I will say before we move on to the reheating of nachos that yes, I do believe that like, you know, we should be seeing, more of ourselves in the media, blah blah blah. But that can't be our only fight. Like,
Yeah.
you know, and especially like right now when we had a good run of like, more people of color in spaces and then they turned around and like, didn't leave the door open for other people of color, it's kind of in some ways like first wave feminism, right? Where, white women were getting what they needed, but then closed the door behind them for women of color. Similarly here, like we had, people of color go into office, right? We had what were they called? Like the squad, And as soon as AOC saw that she was the chosen one, she essentially said, "Fuck you, Ilhan and Corey, and Ayana," right? Like she never had their back on shit. Like even Ayana Presley, who was like the least far, she was like in between AOC and Ilhan and Rashida,
Hmm.
and she still got fucked over. So we're seeing like, entering these rooms and getting this representation comes with like trade-offs and corruption as well, like corruption of the soul on some level. Like as
I
we've
will say,
seen with the BAFTAs recently, like Sinners was
oh
like the
yeah.
most nominated film in the Oscars, and in the BAFTAs, but they're being seen as like this, like, this long shot. How are you going to be the most nominated film in history and still be a long shot uh winner and also like get called out your name, being called a slur on a national stage, international stage?
And then people like flip it over to make excuses for like
Mhm.
why they should be okay with it. Yeah, it's just, yeah, I think sometimes representation feels like a losing game sometimes.
Yeah.
But I don't. I've worked at Telemundo, I've worked at Hispanic institutions, and like I know my place in terms of like they don't want Salvadoran stuff. They don't want Salvadoran stuff because like to talk about Salvadorans, you have to get really real about like mass graves and death and all this stuff. Fortunately, I'm sorry you do. And nobody wants that. Nobody wants to be like, nobody wants me to be, no one wants to be a bummer. That's why I'm like, I make goth music in my bedroom because like that's like the only way for me to deal with this crap. But can we talk about the nachos that people are
Yeah,
reheating?
people are
Okay.
reheating your nachos. Let's talk about it. And what nachos specifically? If somebody has never heard of you before and they're like, this bitch had nachos? I thought she was selling pupusas.
Yes, we had
Reheating
nachos.
podcast idea for you or series, reheating my pupusas.
Trademarked.
Yeah.
Damn, okay. We're gonna get back to that offline. But no, so like I was at the start of Central American Twitter and actually came from Central American Tumblr, and I left Tumblr to follow like cool women, cool thinkers, a lot of them like women of color, black women thinkers that like made this shift from like Tumblr to Twitter, and I was like, okay, let me go too because like I'm gonna go consume and like read their thoughts, and so it was at the start of this thing called Central American Twitter, and it was actually started by my friend Wilfredo. But I was kind of seen as like one of the main antagonists, and um, but it was a big part of my discourse was at the time, and I lived on the West Coast. I grew up in the LA area. Is that Salvadorans, Central Americans, especially in the West Coast region, faced a lot of xenophobia from Mexicans. You know, we share a lot of spaces in the West Coast, and Mexicans have a historic larger diaspora there. And by no means, do I want to start diaspora wars, but I talked about how like in the 80s and 90s, it was tough for my family. Like they got a lot of xenophobia. They were seen as either crazy communists from the war, violent people because of the war, violent people because of the gangs. The women had sort of a hypersexualized sort of thing. Like, you watch Chicano films from that era, like Mi Familia, and like, why is a Salvadoran woman being disrespected or always killed off in these like types of media? And like, I have like a catalog of like some of these stereotypes, and like, maybe one day I'll make something of it and talk about it. But like, it just feels like people weren't ready for it. A lot of like Chicanos and Latinos in LA thought I was being divisive and the West Coast and thought that I was trying to start some kind of like turf war between Salvadorans and Mexicans. For one, like Central Americans are always going to lose that one because there's just a lot less of us. And I just wanted to talk about our experiences, and it always evolved into a diaspora war. Whose horchata's better? The classic one is like, when people confuse you for being Mexican and you say I'm not Mexican, and then people get offended. Like if there's something wrong with being Mexican, then there's not. Like some of my best friends and family members are Mexican. But it is just this reality that, they were a bigger group than us, and there was a lot of discrimination growing up. And it would always devolve into diaspora wars. And now people are actually openly talking about this. People are actually talking about the xenophobia. the way that there is tensions in this community that we need to talk about. Like, if we want to be in solidarity with each other, we need to talk about like the bullshit and like get to the like heart of like what is the issue between us? Why are we pitting each other? Why are we being pitted against each other? And so now kids go on TikTok and whatever, and they're talking about it and they're having these conversations, and I'm really proud of them. I'm like happy that they're reheating these specific nachos. But I want to say it's just like, if you're doing all this discourse about me in the diaspora, like I need y'all to be talking about Bukele violating our people's human rights right now. Like that's where the fight is. And I'm glad you guys are feeling represented. I'm glad you guys are having these conversations and reheating my nachos. They don't even know they're reheating my nachos because I've been erased from the narrative, which is fine. I don't need any more weird people in my DMs having diaspora wars with me. But I always felt like I was like the Salvadoran villain of Central American Twitter because I was seen as so pro like Salvadorans or something, and so like I think people confused me having this discourse as like being a Salvadoran nationalist when the real Salvadoran nationalists are these people who are pro Bukele torturing people. And it's also like, well, a little tinge of homophobia, I'm sure, like whatever, like there's always that in there, but like yeah, people are reading my nachos and people are having these discussions about like, the Salvadoran diaspora and how we're the third largest Latino group and we are not treated like the third largest Latino group. Not that we need to be treated in this hierarchy of like how many of us there are in here, but it's just like we don't make this we don't have this big presence. And I think that's also contributes to like the low self-esteem a lot of Salvadorans have about their identity is that um like a lot of people are very out of touch with their culture because violent processes that have ripped us from the homeland. And that's why we have a big diaspora, but also like there's not a lot of places where like we're an institution. Where I live in Washington, D.C., Salvadorans are an institution. I can say that, but it's like it's all that, in DC, like when you talk about all Latinos, you it's going to be a majority Salvadoran space, but like there isn't this kind of at least I don't experience this kind of exclusion that I did when I was in LA back in the day. And if anything, I don't even talk about the beef between Mexicans and Salvadorans anymore because it's not my day to day anymore. It's no longer something that I face out here. Like um, Central Americans are a little bit more normalized. They're regular here. They're not special. Like I tell someone I'm from El Salvador and they're like, so me too, whatever. And that's kind of a nice place to be because I've never had that before. It's always having to like either like tone it down
Oh.
or like here I'm the Salvadoran, I'm waving the flag, and I don't feel the pressure to do any of that here in DC. And DC has its issues, but Mexicans versus Salvadorans is not one. And I think it's the thing. I think it's also evolved in LA. I don't think it's as intense as it was in the 80s and 90s because it's like we're not this new wave. I think the immigrants that are getting like a lot of hate right now, like I think everywhere are Venezuelans. Um, and I also think there's also some like component of like, ideological differences between different diaspora groups going on with that too. But everyone always hates the newcomers. The newcomers who are coming in huge waves, and we were the newcomers and coming in huge waves in the 80s and 90s, and we helped shape LA. We helped shape LA um in ways like from labor laws to like just, having pupuserias on the corner. And I just want to see our people acknowledged in those and represented in certain ways. But that's no longer my fight. I think right now I'm like, we need to stop the Bukele regime. We need to stop the Trump regime. And diaspora wars don't interest me, but I see a lot of people getting a lot of engagement reheating my old nachos and like, get it, girl. But let's talk about what's actually happening in the homeland. Let's not romanticize it.
Um, I think yeah, the reheating the nachos thing, like I get that you don't feel as like I know that once upon a time, like myself, I was very defensive of like I'm being erased from the narrative. And like that's just not a thing that like at least I don't care about anymore. And like I wonder like what led you to not really pay it much mind anymore.
Smoking a lot of weed during the pandemic. But no, yeah, I mean I kind of got exhausted about like being like seen as like the only thing that I'm like called upon to comment on even today is this like El Salvador stuff, El Salvador stuff. I mean, I did this willingly because I like your
To be
platform.
fair, I said you can come in here and talk about whatever you want, and you said that.
Well, I needed to put Shakira on blast, and I
Yeah,
think I love talking about pop culture with you.
yeah.
And no, but like it just for me it just became really exhausted because like there wasn't a lot of social media chatter around Central Americans at the time
Mhm.
that a lot of people were just like projecting their family shit onto me, their fucking war trauma and stuff onto me. And I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't I
Yeah,
don't I don't want to hold this for everybody. Like I have to do that for my family. Like I like the
yeah.
people in my life, like, we talk about these things and we talk about like, we try to heal from the fucked up things that life has thrown at us as a family. And that's my job to do within my people, my, people that I know. But I can't be doing that for strangers. I can't be doing that. And I can't be giving mental health advice. I'm not trained to do that. And so like the burden of representation kind of crushed me because
Hmm.
like we don't need representation. We need mental health.
Girl,
We need money. Um, you know, Salvadorans and along with Guatemalans, Hondurans, and Salvadorans, we are the Latino groups with the least amount of education,
oh
like
Lord.
least amount of educational attainment. The Pew Hispanic Center says that. And so like there was a lot of needs that need to be filled in this community that are beyond representation. There's like institutional things. There's also these structural things that go back to the homeland and like how Central America is a marginalized region. Like it's it's marginalized even in the realm of Latin America. Like it's such an afterthought. It's like, um, what's his face? From the blue hair dude, he's Salvadoran, Julio Torres.
My
And
mom.
yeah, so he's Salvadoran. In one of his comedies, I can't remember which one, he's like, yeah, I'm from El Salvador. It's like the Nebraska of Latin America. And so like, we're a tiny country, like 90 El Salvadors fit in Mexico, for example. And so like I don't, we don't have the numbers. Like for a long time, I was also told that there's no market for my stories. There's no market for like, and I'm not only telling Salvadoran stories. I'm telling, I talk about like stuff that's happening in Honduras, stuff that's happening in Guatemala, because you can't talk about one without the other. And it's such a small little region, and we share so many similarities. And so yeah, it's just you know, I was always told, well, there's not a market for you guys because there's not a lot of you guys. And then then we became the third largest group and there's still no market for us. And so all of these metrics are bullshit. Like I remember like when I worked at Telemundo, was like, okay, maybe I could tell Salvadoran stories here. And then so they wanted me to do a story on DC Latinos. And I was just like, you can't tell the story without DC Latinos without Salvadorans. We're the majority Latino group here.
And just
And I
checking,
turned,
you're allowed to speak on this?
yeah, and
Okay,
like
cool. Continue.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I burned my bridges at Telemundo already, by saying worse things to and about them. But Salvi non grata, that's me now. But so I did the story and it centered Salvadorans. And like mind you, the program, we're a YouTube show for Telemundo. The program had like a segment on Puerto Ricans, a segment on Colombians, a segment on Mexicans. And I was like, okay, let me do a segment on Salvadorans. They're like, there is more to DC than just Salvadorans. I'm like, for one, you don't know. You're in Miami. Two, it's just like, why is there a problem if I do one story that centers Salvadorans? They're like, you got to include everybody. And I did, I went back, I talk about, there's a big South American Bolivian community here, and like I edited the story, but like every time I wanted to do something that was like about El Salvador, it was just kind of like no. And me, I can't tell a Salvadoran story without talking about like we went through fucking war, Reagan tried to obliterate us, a lot of people died, and that's why we're here. I can't talk about how we got here without that. I'm sorry. And a place like Telemundo is very right wing. They're very anti-communism. You can't talk about El Salvador without talking about communism. I'm sorry, girl. It's part of our history. It's part of the scars that people have. Even if you're not fucking communist, like people were persecuted, and so, it's and a lot of for a lot of especially a lot of old heads in like Hispanic media, like Salvadorans are still like communist guerrillas in their head. And the
Wasn't it
only
there that
and
stereotype that like, oh, check him for tattoos or whatever back in the day?
yes, my ex, remember Hector? His family said that to me. Um, that's fine. I can mention them. Um,
Call him
and
out.
and
You
it's
see
just
him in the
like
street, jump him. Hector.
them. But
Them.
so yeah, and then the whole gang stuff, right? The whole gang stuff. This is the reason I still don't have tattoos, is because like, and people tell me like, Daniel, you're white. It doesn't matter. Like, you get a tattoo, and I'm still gonna get a tattoo on my own time. But there's a big reason why I didn't have tattoos in my 20s and stuff like that, because like I don't want to get caught up in El Salvador. And now El Salvador is going through mano dura again. And there was a different, like a lot of people in El Salvador have tattoos, by the way. Like a lot of people have tattoos, like but that are not in gangs. And but there was a stigma, especially in the diaspora, of like, yeah, I'm okay with tattoos. People in El Salvador may not even care about my tattoos, but like my mom is like, pearl clutchy about it, and I care about what she thinks. And now we're back at a time where like, El Salvador's like, maybe we should lock everyone up with tattoos. Because I go on TikTok, and there's a lot of deportees that have their TikTok now, and they talk about like, like I have a tattoo. I grew up in the States, and now I'm in El Salvador, and I'm getting all kinds of weird looks, and people are saying like you need to be in CCOT. So like this whole anti-tattoo shit has come back in Salvadoran culture a little bit. And it's a little bit harder to police because a lot of people have like Pikachu tattoos and whatnot. Now, tattoos are normal as hell in El Salvador. But yeah, like there's been a lot of, stereotypes in that regard. And always violence, always violence.
Yeah. Um, Before we wrap up, did you want to add anything else to this portion of the podcast? We can have another section where we talk about more girly pop things or talk shit about things that will be available to the
Yeah,
patrons.
yeah. Um, so let's talk about like, can we talk about Courtney Love?
On the yeah, we'll do that on the bonus
Yes.
one. Yeah.
Okay, because she's coming out with some new stuff, and I'm so excited.
I no wonder she's been on my for you stuff on my feed more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, Courtney. Love hate. But you, it's all love.
No,
Uh,
it's hate too, but like it's not hate. It's just like it was formative for me. It's like, I think we're all allowed a problematic celebrity.
Beyonce for me.
Yeah, that's a lot less problematic than mine. But some things are just formative. Like I learned to play guitar because of doll parts, and like that's never gonna change. Like what I'm gonna do, lie? I'm like, no, I taught myself Teen Spirit. No, I taught myself doll parts, and yeah.
Aw. And is there anything that's made you less bitter in recent memory?
My kitties.
That's what you
I
said
haven't.
last time, I think.
Oh God. Anything that's made me less bitter.
Did you get a new
Um,
cat?
yes, I have
Okay.
a new baby cat, black cat. He's from
Oh,
my hometown,
beautiful.
Pomona.
Is that
Um,
three or two cats now?
two cats, two
Oh,
cats.
okay.
Yeah, no, my lease only allows me to have two, so if my landlord's listening, I have two cats. No, spring is coming. So spring after having an icy DC, like spring is peeking its head. Like I'm wearing t-shirts outside. Like, coming from California, 40 degrees was like cold as hell. 40 degrees here is like, oh my God, like I've been touched by like the hand of God. It's 40 degrees.
Oh,
Um,
oh, you're talking 40 degrees is positive for you, bitch.
yes,
I
that's
would
that's how much it
die.
is.
Damn, that's rough. You guys go below zero over there?
Sometimes we like, winter's like 20s and 30s. And but like we've been getting into 40, even 50 degrees, and like this is how much the East Coast has abused me, because like 50 degrees in California is frigid. And because we don't have insulated houses in California, a whole nother thing. But like here, I'm like, oh my God, like the sun hit me and it was 50 degrees like yesterday. It also snowed yesterday, but it was also 50 degrees at some point. The weather's crazy. And like, like I got emotional. Like the sun touched me and I was like, "Oh my God, I remember this from California." And then like the OC theme song starts playing in my head.
Natasha Bedingfield.
California. Katy Perry, all of it. California Love, it's all playing in my head when the sun finally breaks after winter. And so spring is here and I'm excited about that.
Aw. Um, what's made me less bitter recently? I'm gonna watch Peaches this weekend. So she's somebody that I feel like I have a Peaches tattoo.
You do?
Yeah. She, was very formative for me in high school. Whenever uh me and my friends would like, sneak out of our houses and drive to the clubs to like sneak into the clubs at like age 15, 16, like our party album was the Teachers of Peaches and like
Yeah.
we would ride down, the 101, blasting Teachers of Peaches and like, getting ready to show fake IDs or hoping they don't check our IDs and drinking Smirnoff Ices in the car. Don't do that, children. Um and like it just yeah, so I got a friendship tattoo with my high school besties about Peaches and
Peaches. Remember Electro Clash? Oh, that was an era.
yeah, yeah, that's like post-punk real shit. Like that whole wave of stuff. Like her biggest song, like Fuck the Pain Away, was recorded on a cassette, like a live. That's a live recording. Uh, but yeah, she's 59 now. She's gonna be 60 this year, and she's still doing it big. Like her latest album was really good. I think one of my favorites of hers, and just ready to. I've seen some clips of her like tearing up the stage and really fucking up the audience, and I'm excited to like witness that like just because you reach like the third stage in life like doesn't mean you have to stop being any less hardcore. Yeah, so I'm excited
Yeah,
about that.
love
Yeah.
that. Love
Yeah.
Peaches.
um yeah, and that is it for this episode. Daniel, do you want people to follow you anywhere?
Yeah, I'm Pipián Spice. Pipián Spice. Pipián is a slur for homosexual in El Salvador.
Shut up,
And
that's so
it
funny
it
because
also means squash, like the food.
yeah, that's in pipián in Mexican culture is like a mole made out of squash.
Yes.
That's so
Yes.
funny.
Um, I just
I thought
I just
that's what
need
it was, to be honest, because we
yeah,
share like southern Mexico and I feel like Central America sometimes have like odd overlap. So I totally thought that was a reference.
no, it comes from people just calling me faggot in El Salvador or Salvadorans on the internet calling me that as a slur. And I'm like, oh, cool. I like it. It's cute.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, you can totally see like a Sanrio character, like Pipián, little Pipi. Like,
Yeah.
all right. Follow Daniel everywhere on Pipián Spice. And yeah, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
See y'all. All right. Before we head out, I want to give a shout out to our I know her level patrons. I definitely know her. Fernando Peña, Selena Portera, Miranda E, Magdalena Saucedo, Ronnie Leiva, and Bianca Garcia. You're our real ones. And if you want me to know you as well, feel free to go to patreon.com/bitterbrownfams. The link is in the description.